on the day that I first worked with Patrick, he impressed me as the most prepared, thoughtful, helpful, wonderful actor I've ever worked with. And one of my dearest friends, Sir Patrick Steward, please.
Here we go. Look out.
All right. Nice clip reel, nice stuff.
Oh, you know, it was astonishing. There's never been anything like that before in my career.
Oh, please.
No. Johnny, would I lie to you?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, there you go. But there were things
You didn't recognize. I said, you said, what is it? I said, it's blunt talk.
What's that?
It's blunt talk. Talking about orgasms.
Oh, yeah.
I like the stuff from Christmas Carol, but I must say, my personal favorite Christmas Carol, and one of my fondest memories ever, is 1991. You were opening on Broadway. You invited my wife, the wonderful Jeannie Francis, and I to go and see opening night on Broadway. Patrick Steward, one-man show, Christmas Carol. He plays 37 characters. Right? For you who have had the privilege of seeing it. After the show, we go to Sardi's. It's like a movie. We go up to the second floor of Sardi's, we have martinis, and then at about midnight or 1 in the morning, someone comes up with the New York Times, which at that time was still a newspaper that you could hold. You huddle in the corner with the producers. You clearly read the review. The smile on your faces tells us it was a love letter, and it was just like, it was like the movies to watch all this happen. And it was one of my fondest memories of our time ever.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
But what happened later that night?
Well, I was exhausted. I mean, I was alone on stage for nearly 2 hours, and I'd given it everything that night, and so I broke away from the party. I felt bad doing that, but I just needed to be in my hotel room, quietly, just taking in what had happened. And as I'm taking my coat off, I find, oh, there's a newspaper shoved into my pocket. Somebody had given it to me as I was leaving. And I took it out, and it was Clive Barnes, who by this time was once the New York Times theater #1, and then he moved to the New York Post. And I read his review, and he said, he'd been saying, I watched Patrick Stewart doing this and this, and then he disappeared. And I've often wondered, what happened to him? And then tonight I realized he was rehearsing A Christmas Carol. Oh. And it was one of the loveliest things that's ever been said to me, and certainly by a theater critic. So it was a memorable night.
It was a memorable show. Let's go back all the way now. In Yorkshire, where I'm told you're from, which doesn't explain any of your accents to me, but that's... Speaking of accents, do you remember when you were first hired to sell Pontiacs? And there was a commercial on television, and it was you, and you said, Pontiac, an American car, like that. Do you also remember the night that you hosted Saturday Night Live? Brilliantly, my favorite moment on that evening, of course, was when you introduced the musical guest, who was Salt and Pepper.
I was out of my depth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, in Yorkshire, Patrick Steward, this is one of those stories that he told me. I'll tell a number of these tonight. The backstory on this is when we were shooting Star Trek: The Next Generation at Paramount, there was essentially on the lot a bar called Nickadel's, which some of you may or may not remember, which was on Melrose Avenue. It was actually part of the lot, not really, but they did have a lot phone to get some of the grips and gaffers back onto the stage who went there for lunch. But when we'd wrap on Friday night at midnight or 1, the bar would still be open. And the two humans who are here with you tonight were the first ones out of makeup and out of the wardrobe and off to the bar. And we had to wait for the Klingon to get the turtle head off. We had to wait for the android to get the gold off. God knows what the women had those expensive wigs to get rid of. LeVar had to take his, it was a whole thing. Anyway, Patrick and I were at the bar first, and I would ask him different things, and that's sort of how I got to know him more and more. So the obituary story is that he was writing for the Dewsbury Reporter, obits. And tell us what you learned about that job. About that job of writing obituaries and having to go to these.
Yeah, I was the most junior reporter on the newspaper. I left school at 15. My education was over. That was all you got at the level that I was at, which was not scholarly or academic. And, but strings were pulled. I had been head boy of the school. And
Head boy?
Yes.
All right. Oh, you didn't think it as he said it? It means something different in England.
Oh, well, I was a very, very junior reporter.
Go ahead.
And
It's your night.
One of the things I learned very early on, I had a boss for the district that I covered. There was a neighborhood which happened to be where I lived, so I had a number of connections there who could give me gossip and stuff they'd heard and how politics were affecting the community and all of that. And it was explained to me by my local boss that I would write local obituaries. And I would go to given the address of who had died, and there was always a family member, a husband or a wife there, and I would knock on the door and I would say, I'm Patrick Stewart, the Dewsbury District reporter. I'm so sorry to have heard of your loss. I wonder if I could just ask a few questions. So I would go in and I would conduct a short interview because the obituaries were never long. And then they would say to me, every time, would you like to come and see him, love? He looks real grand. Or she looks beautiful. And I would say, oh, okay. And I would be taken in, and there would be a body lying on a table, sometimes on their bed still, and we would look at him, and I would say, that's wonderful. Well, my condolences, and thank you so much, and I would leave. Well, one morning, I did 3 of those. And I got back to the office, to the writer's room. And one of the senior writers said to me, Patrick, are you all right? You look terrible. And I said, oh, God, I mean, it's these obituaries and looking at dead body after dead body. And he said, oh, Lord, you don't have to do that. And I said, well, what do I do? I mean, I don't want to insult or hurt people. He said, all right, what you say is, oh, that's very kind of you, but I've recently lost someone myself.
Ah. A word to the wise.
It worked.
Yeah. Another story I heard at Nicodell's that I loved was about the Hungarian actor. I don't know if it was part of the Dressing Room 7 and the Royal Shakespeare Company or Sheffield, but I think that's enough of a cue to tell one of my favorites.
Well, it is. It was Sheffield, and it was, I spent the first few years of my career in what was called Repertory theater, which meant, and it started out with weekly rep, which meant we did a new play every Monday night. Every Monday night. So we had like 3 days, 4 days rehearsal. Then I moved on to Sheffield, fortnightly rep, 2 weekly rep. Every second week we would do a new play, and then 3 weekly rep, and then finally Bristol Old Vic and monthly rep, and then the Royal Shakespeare Company. Where am I going, Jonathan?
You're going with the Hungarian story who tackled you.
Oh, yeah. Well, I lost my hair quite early. And so when it was really gone, I grew it very long on one side, and I would do this elaborate treatment.
This is my favorite part.
You know. And there was a Hungarian director who was working at Sheffield at the time, who had been at drama school with me. He and a Hungarian actor, Siobhan Ilas, had both got out of Hungary when the Russian battles and fighting started there, and they had come to England to continue their acting and directing careers. And one day, I went over to George Kishvalvi's house, the director, and we were having a very pleasant time. And all of a sudden, I felt my hands caught and pulled me behind me. And I said, George, what the hell are you doing? And then his wife walked out of the kitchen with a pair of scissors. And I knew right away. And I said, no, don't do it. And George was also holding my head. And she cut all this long hair off my head. And I'm yelling, no. And George gets me and turns me around and looks me in the face and says, now, you be yourself. Yes! Thank you, George.
Also from Nick Adels, I love the movie Dune. Remember Dune, David Lynch, Dune? Particularly the story about how he felt and treated you during the shooting of. It's weird, this story.
Yeah, it is a little weird. And
Do you want to not share it, or you want to share it?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I can share it because I had been sent the script of Dune, and I'd read it and really liked it and was excited about it and said, yes, I'd love to do something in this. And that was it. I never heard anything more at all again. And then I got a job playing a role in a film that was starring a Japanese pop singer who was a huge success in Japan, but I had never heard of him, and few of us had. And I had to go to somewhere in the middle of England. No, it wasn't England, it was France. And I was in my hotel room, ready to work, makeup, costume, and everything. But they said, look, it's going to be longer than we thought. So just make yourself comfortable, and we'll come and get you and when we're ready. And then my phone rang. I answered it, and a voice said, Patrick, it's your agent. And I said, oh, well, what's up? And he said, do you remember I sent you that script, Dune? And I said, oh, yeah, why? He said, well, you've been offered one of the important supporting roles in it. I said, what? And he said, the only thing is, they want you to start on Monday. And I said, well, that's not possible, because you should know. I'm filming here. And, we're in southern Germany, in the wine country, and where are they shooting? Mexico City. Okay. He said, don't worry. I've discussed this with them. Your present job will take priority over anything in Dune. But when you get a break, they will fly you to Mexico, and then you can do some of your Dune. And this is to last for about a month. And that's exactly what I did. So the time came when I had to go the first time, the Sunday. I got a plane from Munich to London, where my wife brought me some extra garments to wear because I got so little. And then I flew to Miami, and from Miami to Mexico City. And I got to my hotel room at about 11 o'clock at night, absolutely exhausted, and there was wardrobe and makeup waiting for me. Because I was to meet with the director the next morning, and then I would be on the set the following morning, Monday morning. And so I slept, of course, badly that night, got up Sunday morning, and went to the hotel I knew the director was staying at, and I'd been told, this is room number, don't go to the desk, just go straight up and knock on the door. Well, the door was actually open. So I knocked on the door, and a voice said, come in. And I pushed the door open, and there was recognizable David Lynch sitting at a chair. And he looked up and he said, yes? And I said, it's Patrick Steward, Mr. Lynch. And he looked at me with his mouth open, and looked at me and looked at me. And then he put his head down, and then he said, all right, well, sit down, make yourself comfortable. Luckily, he had set up a few minutes later a meeting with Kyle MacLachlan, Jürgen Prochnow, and Max von Sydow, who were all to be in the first scene I was to shoot on Monday morning, and we were going to rehearse the scene. And they arrived, and when they did, they were so lovely. Oh, welcome, Patrick. It's great to see you. I'm so glad that you're here. All three of them were wonderful guys, and Kyle became a lifelong friend. And then we went on the set, and David Lynch never spoke to me and never even looked in my direction. I wasn't there at all. Now, luckily, we were filming in what was it called? One of those little kind of spaceship things. Can't remember. Ornithopter. Thank you very much. There's always somebody who knows these things. and that it went on like that for a couple of weeks. And then one day, the producer of the film,
Dino De Laurentiis.
Dino De Laurentiis.
I didn't have a copter.
Thank you.
Yeah.
His daughter was producing Dune. And she said, Patrick, are you doing anything tonight after we wrap? And I said, no. She said, let's have dinner together. And she was a wonderful and lovely woman, and I was delighted. So we went out and we ordered and we had a glass of wine. And then she said, look, I know things have been a little awkward with you and David, but I have decided you need to know why. Yeah, please. And she said, well, you probably wouldn't be aware of this, but when you were working in the theater at the Barbican with the Royal Shakespeare Company, David and myself came there to meet with a young actor who we were thinking about casting in Kyle MacLachlan's role, but he didn't do it. And while we were waiting for him, this man came in a long gown down to his legs and long dark hair and sunken cheeks and really shitty looking. And David Lynch said, find out who that is. Get his name. He looks great. And so she did. She said his name is Patrick Steward. He said, great. Write it down. So we go back. The story goes back to Churubusco Studios in Mexico. And there was an actor who had been employed to play Gurney Halleck, but he had personal problems. And he had to be let go. And so they're having this meeting. We've already started shooting. Who are we going to get? And then he said, that guy we saw in London, find his name. Yeah, Patrick Steward. Get him. He's the one I want. That's what I had looked like. And into poor David's room walked. Anyway, that's it.
I like it. I like it a lot.
Oh, it reminds me of You remember the series Star Trek: The Next Generation? No. On the bridge, Sir Patrick would sit in the center seat, which had been built for his ass, ergometrically designed. Am I right?
Yep.
So you'd be comfortable.
Oh,
in it.
yeah.
On his right is Wild Bill Riker. That's me. We're bouncing around. Over here to the left, the beautiful and talented Marina Sirtis, Counselor Troy. We're being bombarded by Romulans or Borg or whatever the hell, whoever was shooting at us. Brent and LeVar down front. People are throwing themselves around in their chair like this, and we're shaking. And I'm next to Patrick, and I hear during all the rumbling, "Oh, Johnny. Oh, Johnny." 25 years in the Royal Shakespeare Company for this. True story.
Yeah.
Now, I've experienced other shows that you've been in. One of my personal favorites is a Scottish play, which we saw a reference to here. Did you see Patrick in Macbeth? Anyone have the privilege of this at BAM or on Broadway? And my favorite scene is what is now known as the sandwich scene, correct?
Correct.
There we
Yep.
go. That's all you.
Oh, well, it has always been known as the murderous scene because it's a three-hander with Macbeth talking to two men whom he is going to employ to kill Banquo and Banquo's son when they're out on the road coming home that night. And it's a long scene, and Macbeth talks and talks and talks. And one day in rehearsal, I said to Rupert Gould, our brilliant director, "Rupert, I just wish I had an action to do in this scene. I do nothing. I just stand here and and it's tiresome and boring." Well, I'm bored anyway. And he said, "Okay, well, right, why not make a sandwich?" And of course, there was a roar of laughter in the rehearsal room, a lot of people sitting around. And I said, "Okay." And he said, "Good. And stage management, get somebody to go out and buy a loaf of bread. Don't cut the loaf of bread. We don't want to cut one. We want a loaf of bread and butter and margarine and ham and just get it, bring it here." So we had a break, and then all this stuff arrived, and we started the scene. And at one point, when I was feeling I wasn't getting anywhere, I went over and got the loaf of bread and began. And the two murderers looked at one another and looked at me, and I went on talking and making things and buttering the sandwiches and then getting the ham and some mustard on the top, all the time talking Shakespeare. And then I made it. I cut it in half, and then I cut one half into quarters, and I took the 2 quarters and I gave it to the 2 murderers. And then I took the half sandwich and went, "Yes!" And we finished the scene, and the room went into uproar. People stood up and applauded and cheered and things. And so did the audiences, and it became known famously now as the sandwich scene in Macbeth. I don't know what Mr. Shakespeare would say, but I have a feeling you would have gone for it.
The value of a good director, then, eh? No.
Yes.
I was going to share with you a couple of my experiences with Patrick as an actor. When we did the pilot of Next Generation, a wonderful director named Corey Allen directed us. May he rest in peace. And he was very passionate about the work, and he was the right guy for us. But at one point, I played Commander Riker. He played Captain Picard, the wackiest nut in the galaxy. And we were standing in the window of some part of the ship. I don't know what.
10 forward.
No, 10 forward wasn't there yet.
Oh.
Maybe the ready room. Anyway, we're looking out the window, and beneath the window is the camera and Corey Allen, and the two of us and we were just getting to know each other. We were in those horrible spandex spacesuits, and And Corey, the direction he gave us, he looked up as he was so passionate. He said, okay, boys, fuck the universe!
Yeah.
Fuck the universe!
Best note we've ever been given.
Best note. Now, I went on to direct Patrick in quite a few things. Actually, I have had spent more time on stage with you as an actor or as a director than any other person in my life, and I think the same may be true for you. And I rarely note him because, he's a pretty good actor, pretty generally knows what he's doing. I just got to keep him on track. And when I approached Patrick, it used to be he would glibly and wonderfully say, I know, Johnny. Act better, okay. Right? And then it developed into something which I thought was a really good, very astute observation of the whole craft, which was I would approach him and he'd say, I know, Johnny. Think faster. Right?
Yeah.
And it helps.
Yeah.
Louder, faster, and funnier.
Yeah. Louder, faster, and funnier.
We also did something where Patrick directed us. It was a piece called Every Good Boy Deserves Favor, written by Tom Stoppard, music by Andre Previn. Patrick was in it, Gates was in it, Colomini was in it. Brent and I played the prisoners. It took place in a symphony orchestra because one of the prisoners imagined that he was a triangle player. We toured, we did Orange County and Minneapolis, and anyway, it was a wonderful experience, great success. Then Patrick started to direct on our show, occasionally. And one day, we were in engineering. He was directing. We all respect him. He's Patrick Stewart. He wasn't Sir Patrick Stewart, but he was Patrick Stewart. We knew what we were getting into. And he says to me, Johnny, what about this? If you come into engineering and you cross, and then when you're just about halfway across the room, if you would just kneel down like this. First of all, there's no fucking table, there's nothing, it's me. It's me and engineering, there's consoles here and there. I said, sure, Patrick, I'd be happy to. What am I doing? He said, I don't really know what you're doing, but if you could make that work for me, it would be great for the shot. True?
Yeah.
Fact or fiction?
Fact.
Exactly. Ay. Think faster.
There was a reason.
Oh, now he tells me.
So he was coming in here, and I wanted to take the camera down. So we had him in a lower position because of the background that we had there. But I didn't know how to do it, except to ask him, would you mind kneeling down?
I did it.
I don't direct anymore.
Oy.
Aye.
Vejmir. I remember going to see Galaxy Quest. You guys remember Galaxy Quest? Which was so accurate, as if they had read our mail, as if they knew us. So I called Patrick. I saw it at the Cinerama Dome here. Patrick was shooting X-Men in Toronto, I guess.
Yeah.
So I called Patrick. I said, you won't believe this movie, Galaxy Quest. You got to go see it. So he saw it twice. Yeah. And that was, it has, for some reason, it must be awfully encumbered. There's been no sequel done, but that bonded us even more. Which brings me to X-Men.
But can I just tell you,
I thought it's your night.
When you reminded me of this, and we were talking, I was remembering that weekend when I went twice to see the film and was just overwhelmed by it. And Sunny, my wife, had never seen it. So we watched it 3 or 4 days ago.
Did it hold up?
We watched it again. It's brilliant. Everything about it. And I know you might have thought I would feel uncomfortable, but I don't think it was so much us as were the examples. It was Bill and Leonard and the original group.
So we were making fun of them.
There were,
That's better. I never thought that. No, I thought that one of the characters was had a visor like Geordie.
he did. Yeah, he did.
That's our show.
Yeah,
It was a mix.
I think they mixed it a little bit.
It's okay to make fun of Shatner. isn't it? Thank you very much. Anyway, X-Men, Star Trek, Picard, Captain Mr. Xavier, Professor Xavier, Ian McKellen, who married. I went to the wedding of Patrick Steward and Sonny Ozell. The officiating was done by Sir Ian McKellen. It was the most beautiful wedding. Great food, great music, great people. It was on Lake Tahoe. And then it dawned on a number of us after a few drinks while we were dancing. We didn't really know what church Sir Ian was from. But it felt that not only had Sonny and Patrick been married, but maybe Ian and Patrick had been married at the same ceremony. Which I kind of liked. Have any of you had the privilege of seeing, remember when they toured with the Beckett, with Waiting for Godot, and the Pinter with the No Man's Land? Did it get better than that? There was nothing better than those two. Big fans.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm told we're supposed to talk about Picard.
Yes.
All right.
Very, very important.
Very important, and I'm happy to segue into it. We did 178 hours of Star Trek The Next Generation. We did 4 films together, and then we did 3 seasons together of Picard. And in the beginning of Picard, Patrick called me. I was in Maine, and he had called a dinner with the cast to explain what Picard was going to be and why you decided to do it. And I'll let you take it from there. Is that a good spot?
Yes, yes. It took my breath away when I was approached, because I was so sure that with our 7 years of series and 4 feature films, which totaled maybe 12 or 13 years of work on Star Trek, The Next Generation, that we had done and said everything that there was to say about these characters. And so I agreed to meet with Akiva Goldsman, Alex Kurtzman, Michael Chabon, and I said, but when I got there, look, folks, I'm meeting with you even though I am going to turn down your offer, because I respect you all and I want to explain to you why. And they listened to me, absolutely quietly and attentively. And then there was a silence, and I said, so, thank you for hearing me out. And Alex Kurtzman, I remember saying, could we just give you some of our thoughts about this? And he began to talk, and talked, and talked, and then Michael talked, and Akiva, Alex, Michael all had much to say. And I said, well, I'm very impressed with that, but I'm sorry, I'm going to have to pass. And I got in the car, and I was driving home, and by the time I got home, I had changed my mind. and
Thank you.
well, I first of all said to them, look, would you mind putting onto paper as much as you can of what you all said to me today? And they did that. By the way, this meeting took place at the Bel Air Hotel, as fancy as it gets.
It's like a Randy Newman song.
Yeah, exactly. And I studied what they had said, and I went back to them again, and I said, look, I don't think there's anything more that I can bring. And I think it was Akiva who said, look, more than 20 years have passed. And in that time, surely you must have experienced some change in yourself, in your life, in your ambitions, in your experiences. Is that true? And I said, oh, it sure is, yes. And he said, well, that's what's happened to Jean-Luc as well. but it's more extreme. And to every single one of your cast members, they're not the people we knew when we were shooting Next Generation. And I got it, totally. And my interest and excitement was magnified by what they said, and I am so glad that I listened to them and that I read their notes again, because the 3 years that we shot Picard was a grand experience, mostly a grand experience. We did there was a lot of negotiating and a lot of disagreement. But the show survived it, and by the time we got to season 3, I think the work that Terry Matalas was doing on that season. And I think it's as good as anything that we ever did on Next Generation. And it's entered into a new world for people we knew and loved, because I love these characters and I love these guys who play them all. It's very, very deeply. And it worked. So I learned the big lesson there, which was, Patrick, don't rush into making decisions, but think something through, as they had already thought it through, and they persuaded and convinced me. Thank you.
Thank you. We're very grateful that you decided to do it, and very grateful that you decided to do the 3rd season.
To be back on stage with these guys. I was not prepared, because I'd said early on, look, I don't want this to be a reunion show, Picard. Not that at all. And, maybe we should certainly bring Riker back into it. And
good idea. Very good choice.
I did say that. But I don't want it, the whole, to be about the Next Generation team. And by season 3, I was saying, can't we get more of them in? Because I was enjoying the experience so much, and the work that we were doing. I remember one day going in to watch Marina filming that scene that she had in the garden, in the back garden, before I showed up. She was extraordinary.
I know. She crushed it.
It was so exciting to be there watching, Her seriousness, her dedication, her truthfulness was so impressive. And it was like that with everyone, so we were lucky, weren't we? No, we weren't lucky. We weren't lucky. We did the right thing.
Woo! We made it so. Here we go.
We made it so.
I have some questions from the audience, which I've been encouraged to ask. The first one is my favorite. When Jonathan Frakes is directing you, what, if any, note from him makes your eyes roll? Next question. You don't have an answer for that one, do you?
I don't.
Yeah, cool. What do you think it says about Picard's philosophy of leadership that we have looked to him as a mentor for over 3 decades? This, I'm sure you have a fucking answer to. Pull up a chair.
Well, seriously, that is not my responsibility. That was Gene Roddenberry. Yeah. Gene and I were never close as a unit, and a little bit like poor David Lynch, who, by the way, on our last day of shooting, we all had a wonderful dinner party, and David came and sat beside me and took my hand and apologized. And we have been in touch since then. We are both meditators, and we're involved in the same kind of meditation. And he, well, I was going to tell a story which is so similar to one I've already told, I'm going to move on from it. But Gene and I were not close and familiar. And he nevertheless pitched to me this idea about leadership. And one of the few things he said to me was, have you read the Horatio Hornblower books? And actually, I had. As a teenager, I'd read them. He said, read them. That's Jean-Luc Picard. And there was so much in those books that I'd loved and admired as a teenager that I think I understood it. But we got better at it, didn't we, as it went on?
Well, yeah, we got better at
I mean,
it.
I watched some of our early scenes and episodes, and
We were very uncomfortable. I blame the spacesuit. I looked like I had a stick up my ass. It was horrifying. And Gene had said to me, I auditioned for this part 7 times, by the way, over 6 weeks.
No.
Yeah. And he said, what I really want from Riker is a Midwestern Gary Cooper glint. Never smile. Which really feels like me, right? So I spent 2 years trying not to smile, and it didn't work out so well. And then things loosened up. But by the 3rd season, I think we were on a pretty decent roll. Whew. All right. It says here in this book, what's the hardest or most emotional episode you filmed during Star Trek Next Gen?
Inner Light.
They love that episode. You have the flute on your desk?
The flute is in my personal belongings, yes. Somebody sent me the flute to autograph the box it was in. And I said, actually, I already have it. I own it. Not that one. It was a reproduction of the actual thing itself.
What else did you steal?
I stole my
Communicator.
communicator.
Yeah.
And I asked if I could have my last uniform. And I was told, no, that's not possible. Now, I knew that already some actors had taken their costumes with them. And I
Are
went
you on Next Gen now or on Picard? On Next Gen.
Oh, we're on Next Gen.
Yeah. We
gone
stole
back.
our uniforms from there because we were
Yeah.
we were afraid to ask. Because Mary Howard, who's with us tonight,
Oh, yes.
would have said you can't have them.
Mary, would you mind just standing up for a moment?
Our producer for many, many years is with us in the house. Hi, Mayor. Mayor. There was $80,000 worth of Star Trek uniforms stolen at one point. Is that about right, Mayor? And the FBI got involved, and Mary solved the crime. They made a deal, the crooks who stole the $80,000 worth of Star Trek shit, were going to trade it for the kit car from that Universal show called Knight Rider. So, legend has it, Mary and the FBI have binoculars. They're in the desert. 2 semis pull up. One semi. True story or not, Mur? Pretty true-ish. One has the kit car in, one has $80,000 worth of Star Trek uniforms. They swap. FBI swoops in. Mary cuffs him. Goes in slammer. You didn't know that story?
No, I didn't know that story. No. But I believe it,
Yeah.
and it sounds to me like Mary Howard.
Great producer. Great, great producer. Now, this is a question for Patrick Stewart. If Sir Patrick Stewart could travel to the future one time for 1 week and then return to the present day, when and where would he travel to? Never end a sentence with a preposition.
I'm going to really disappoint this questioner because the future is unknown and I only want to know it as it comes about, as it happens. What I would love to do is go back.
Yes.
And my first choice has always been the first public performance of William Shakespeare's Hamlet. I want to sit in that theater with maybe William Shakespeare, further down the road, and watch that very first performance. That would be my moment. If
I like
could.
it.
But the future, it will happen.
You've been to the future.
Yeah, I've been there. I've been there. Yeah,
exactly.
It was uncomfortable.
Are you kidding? What about the whole thing with the Borg? That didn't go so well.
I know, yeah.
We don't
want to meet the Borg.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, they're out there.
There is that. Speaking of the future, October 5th, I believe, is the release date of October 3rd. Sir Patrick Steward has written his memoir, Making It So, filled with lies, but very entertaining, I'm told. Please buy his book. He needs the money. You can get an autographed copy if you pay more.
No.
Oh, that's
Same
the
price.
deal. Same price.
Yeah.
That's good to know. Thank you all very much for a wonderful evening. Thank you. Good? Had enough?
That's good.
Success of such a great film. Thanks for coming. See you next time. Thank you. Good night.